Good evening and welcome to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. And as is the norm in Guyana, a dynamic society like ours, there is always an abundance of issues for discussions. Tonight is no different. I want to begin by by welcoming all of you who are joining me on television in Region 5, Mahaika to West Coast, Berbice. Good evening. All of you who are joining me on television in Region 6, East Berbice to New Amsterdam, and of course along the Quarantine Coast all the way to Molson Creek. Good evening. And to those of you who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown, good evening. And last but not least, the tens of thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Asia, and as far as Australia and New Zealand. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And I want to begin by sharing some thoughts that are being expressed here on the Facebook Live. And I want to encourage you to please press that share button on your phone, press that share button on your computer, so that this program will be viewed not only by you, but by your friends and followers. So let's share this program wide and far. Nishad Sharma, good evening. Gopal Ramatar watching from New York, good evening. Anil Prasad, good evening. Danmati Balgobin, good evening. I saw Kayum Yasin earlier. Pandit Chan, good night from New York, Schenectady. Amir K is watching. Ramnarayan Singh. Sita Susanka Rampasad from North America. Ray Roop. Dennis Mohabir. Savitri Warnot from Trinidad. Winchester Borkel. And so many of you, Leela Abbas Sukul, Nankishore Drupati from Kissimmee, Florida, Bim Nauran, Abdul Haq, Ruptarain Balram from New Jersey, Jennifer Singh from Maryland, Terry Ramdial, Shanti Dokram from Canada. So we have a full house, and I can go on and on to greet you, but I can't do that. We have to spend some time discussing the issues. But I am happy that so many of you are joining us. Aisha Hussein from South Florida, Asha Dali from Toronto, Mavis Bagwandas from New York. Mavis, good evening. And I remember I have to do something for you. Mavis wants me to send out greetings to her niece and nephew who got married, Dr. Rambaran. Congratulations on your wedding. I wish you long life. I wish you a happy marriage. I wish you a productive marriage. And these greetings are coming from your aunt, Mavis Bagwandin. Dion Johnson from Brazil. Shami Sham, and so many of you. Welcome, 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 and press that share button on the phone so that not only you will see this program, but your friends and followers. And please share your thoughts with me so that we can interact and we can have a constructive and responsive engagement. So the big thing on the agenda tonight is the celebration of our 2 years anniversary in government. It was a day like today in 2020, August the 2nd, that the election results of March 2nd, 2020 elections were finally declared by the chairman of the Elections Commission, the Honorable Justice Claudette Singh retired, and Dr. Irfan Ali was declared the president. And later that day, President Ali was sworn in, Prime Minister Mark Phillips was sworn in, Vice President Bharat Jagdev was sworn in. Yours truly was sworn in. And Gail Teixeira was sworn in as Minister of Governance and Parliamentary Affairs. It was one of the most historic elections in Guyana simply because we had 5 months of travail, turmoil, and struggle because the machinery of GCOM in conspiracy with political actors ensconced in the APNU AFC together attempted to thwart the election results, to rig the election results, to commit fraud with the election results in order to declare themselves or to have themselves declare the winner of the elections. Fortunately, all the events were well recorded and documented. Election day's activities were observed by all major observer teams observing elections in the Western Hemisphere. And all election day activities were certified to be orderly and to meet the standard of transparency and accountability requisite for elections. The APNU AFC themselves, at the end of polling day, declared that elections were free, fair, transparent, and orderly. And that came from no less than their presidential candidate, President David Granger at the time. He came out and said so. And then when they realized, after the counting, that they would have lost the elections, then hell broke loose. They hatched a plan that they will use Mingo, the returning officer of Region 4, as the instrument to take from the PPP 170,000 votes and give those votes to the PPPNC, APNU AFC, because that was the margin that they required to win when they counted. And they gave him fabricated and concocted documents to use instead of statements of poll to declare the results. And we had to go to court, and you know the whole story. 100 countries across the globe, 100 governments across the globe came out in condemnation of their attempts. Every observer team came out in condemnation. Every diplomatic agency in Guyana came out in condemnation. CARICOM, the Commonwealth, the Organization of American States, and a whole host of international organizations came and condemned what they were attempting to do. Every court in the judicial hierarchy of our judiciary pronounced over and over against them, all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice, because they tried many strategies. In the end, they were defeated. The will of the people prevailed, and we were declared the just, lawful, and constitutional winner of those elections. Tonight, they are assembled at Parade Ground on Carmichael Street, where they are beating their chests and proclaiming that they won those elections and accusing our government of being installed. Well, every time they say that, I am happy and I am vindicated Because every time they say that, the Guyanese people, the objective people of the world, get an opportunity to reflect upon that horrendous 5 months. And they bring back the wounds that they have inflicted on the psychology and physiology of the Guyanese people. They want you to believe that what you saw did not happen. They forget that you saw what they were attempting to do. It's not that the PPP told you what they were attempting to do. You saw it live, transmitted on the internet, and some of you may have been present, and you saw the events as they were unfolding one by one. Yet, every time they speak about this matter, they claim that they are the victims of fraud, that the PPP perpetrated fraud, that we are the riggers. And every time they say that, they jar your memory, they jar your psychology, they jar your emotional composition, and they remind you vividly, and they remind you emphatically who they really are, and that they must never ever be trusted, because they attempted to steal from you and then convert themselves into the victims, not the robbers. Imagine somebody come to steal from you, and when you catch them red-handed, they say that you are trying to steal from them, and they are the victim, and you, according to them, are the perpetrators. And that is exactly what they are doing, one after the other, to a grouping, a small grouping, I must say, at parade ground. They are feeding those people that Kool-Aid, their own concocted, fabricated Kool-Aid. They're feeding it. And once they continue that narrative, they will forever be out of government, because nobody will ever trust them. They got an opportunity, as they claim, to win, to go to court, and to challenge the elections. They got an opportunity after the election results were declared. They filed 2 petitions, not one, 2 petitions. Their lawyer, Roysdale Ford, at the time when the petitions were filed, engaged the press in front of the High Court building and said to the world that within 6 months, those 2 petitions will put the government out of office. Well, 2 years have now passed, and the government is still here, but his 2 petitions did not survive 6 months in the court system. So they couldn't even get that right. They couldn't even get their case past the preliminary stage to get them to call the evidence. And now they're cussing the judiciary. They're saying that the judiciary was unfair to them. Every organization in the world have rules, and you must comply with the rules before you can get into the organization. They don't want to comply with any rules, so they want to get into government by not winning the elections. They want to win a case in the court without complying with the rules and regulations by which cases are heard and determined by the court. And when they don't get their way, they cost everybody other than themselves. And the case was just, one of the cases was just heard at the CCG. And mark my word, it will be thrown out there as well. Mark my word. Tonight, they are there, and they're speaking about 49 boxes. that statutory forms were not placed in. Well, let me tell you that story as they are bringing it up, and it may be relevant now. Those boxes came from the Better Hope LBI locality. Mingo was the returning officer for region number 4. It was I who drew it to Mingo's attention that those forms were not placed into the ballot boxes by his presiding officers. I have responsibility for that area. And I drew it to Mingo's attention. Mingo investigated it and informed me that he is aware that the documents were not put into the ballot box as he had instructed, but that they were sent separately to him. And Mingo confirmed to me that he received those documents. And Mingo informed me that he gave those documents to Keith Lowenfield, the chief elections officer. Keith Lowenfield confirmed to me that he received those documents from Mingo and that he stored them at GCOM's storage facilities at Collingin on the east coast of Demerara, and that I must not worry, the documents are with GCOM. No one can dispute what I am saying. I was the person. Today, you are hearing that the documents are missing. Well, Lowenfield told me that he received them from Mingo and he has put them in GCOM storage at Collingin. I am not working with GCOM. GCOM must go and find the documents. But how can the absence of those documents invalidate the ballots that were in the box? How can the absence of those documents invalidate the ballots? What are counted for elections are ballots, not statutory documents. So an errant presiding officer will never be permitted by the law to throw away the statutory documents or file them improperly, and that will cause people's ballots to be invalidated. That is not the law of Guyana, and that is not the law of any part of the world. It is the ballots that are counted. It is the statements of polls that are totaled, and that is what gives you the results. The ballots are recorded, are counted and recorded in the statements of poll, and the statements of poll are totaled. All of that is laid down in the law. Statutory documents are not necessary for the counting of ballots. It's ballots what are counted. So this narrative that they keep spewing, and they believe it, they say it to themselves, and they believe it. And they have innocent, uninformed, but complicit bystanders listening to them and drinking that Kool-Aid wholesale. Lowenfield must answer where those documents are. GCOM must answer where those documents are. But we are going to find them. The Commission of Inquiry will produce all of that. And then they speak about dead people voting and people voting from overseas. Well, they produced a list from the Immigration Department that nobody knew where that list came from, because the list had names of people who were actually in America, but those people did not vote. And that is why when they were being examined, none of them could have attached a vote to any of those names. They couldn't. At the recount, they keep calling the names one after the other. Those names were not ticked off as voters. They were just calling people names who were in America. And they're saying that those people voted. But when you look, if they voted, a tick would be next to their names. None of the names were ticked. And that is why the CARICOM observer team that they said is the most legitimate interlocutor to observe the recount. They shut out every other observer from the recount. They said that CARICOM alone must do it. And that CARICOM team dismissed all their allegations as baseless and without merit. They started to curse the CARICOM team. They started to cuss me a Motley. They chased the Jamaican man, former Prime Minister, out of Ashmin Building. So I am glad when they recite these things so that I can refresh your memory, because they want you to believe that you are hallucinating, that you made up these things in your head, that you didn't see these things happen. They want you to doubt your own senses and your own reality. That's the narrative that they're running. And since 2020 to now, it has characterized their entire conduct. They go to the parliament. You saw what they did when we were debating the Natural Resource Fund law on the 29th of December 2021. You saw how they descended into the well of the parliament, how they were blowing whistle and they were dancing. You saw how many times they ignored the speaker when he said take their seats. You saw how they ran away with the mace and broke it. You saw how they dragged an employee of the parliament on the floor. You saw all of that. Then they turn around and take the government and the speaker to court. They said they were wrong, that the speaker never allowed them to speak, and that they never did any of those things. That is the kind of people you're dealing with. People who are living in an alternative world, and they want to take you into that alternative world with them. And that's why I'm telling you, it is a mental sickness. It is a mental sickness. I listen to them. These people living another reality. So they are shouting at the top of their voices that Guyana is in crisis. Guyana is in crisis. Guyana is going through the best period of Guyana's history, perhaps since its discovery. This period is the best period that Guyana is going through. We have never had so many investors flocking our doors. We have never had so many projects of a transformational nature taking place before our eyes. We have never had the amount of money flowing in this economy. We have never had the amount of job creation opportunities that are available. We have never had the magnitude of investments taking place right before your eyes. We have never had the type of collaborative arrangements with international companies such as Mount Sinai. And all of this is taking place before your eyes. You're living this. And they are shouting that Guyana is in crisis. It is they who are in crisis. They are in crisis because they are out of sync with reality. They are out of sync with reality. But they are shouting at the top of their voices that Guyana is in crisis. Guyana is in a crisis mode. So, 2 years, we had to fight again. Now, these are people whom you know and the world knows stole elections from 1968 to 1985. And the one opportunity they were given from 1992 to 2015, they were given one opportunity in 2015 to go back into government. And they tried to thief the election again in 2020. That is their track record. And they are there professing to be Democrats. and victims of fraud. That is what you are living, that is what you're confronted with in this country. That is what you're confronted with. And that is what the PPP got to face on a daily basis. But we are unconcerned about that type of, well, we are not unconcerned. We have to accept that reality and push the country forward. And that is what we have been doing for the past 2 years. The mother of all rights and freedoms is the right to elect a government of your choice. They took that away from the Guyanese people in 1968 by rigged elections. And they moved the country from economic prosperity to complete bankruptcy. That is what they did. That is what the failure to elect a government of your choice does to a country. And we are not without experience. We lived it. So we don't have to go to a book. We lived it. And that is what they wanted to return Guyana to. And that is why it is not coincidence that it was the day after Freedom Day that we were put into the government. The day after Freedom Day. Because the mother of all freedoms is the right to elect a government of your choice. Because if you don't have that right, if that right is taken away from you, then all other rights go with it. Because the demagogue, the dictator, the authoritarian can only survive in government by taking away your other rights. Because you can't criticize, you can't speak. And that is how they ran the government. And that is why they killed Walter Rodney. And they jailed people who stood in their way and people who spoke out about them. They killed Father Dark. These are not things that we must erase from our minds. These are things that must remain fresh in our minds because the perpetrators are still there. They are still there. And they are still trying to spin a narrative that they are innocent. They are still trying to spin a narrative that they are innocent. It means that they have never recognized that they have done something wrong. And once they have not recognized that, they can't correct it. There is no contrition. There is no repent. And any criminal who has never repented will never change. The first step to rehabilitation is acceptance of the wrong, contrition, and repentance. They are not prepared to do any. So it means that if you give them an opportunity, they steal government again. So we have to be constantly on the alert. And 2 years of government, we had to be on that alert. So that takes a lot of energy. But despite that, every endeavor of human life in Guyana has been positively impacted over the past 2 years as never before in Guyana's history. If you look at the legal sector alone, the number of laws that we are passing, the number of courthouses that we have built. If you go into the infrastructure, the amount of roads and bridges that we have built, Demerara Harbour Bridge, New Bridge, and any of the sector, agriculture, we have never had a more aggressive agri-agenda than we have now. Education sector, where will you find a scholarship like the Gold Scholarship? Today we are distributing cash grant, something that they took away from the people from 2015 to 2020. We are restoring it, and every single child in this country is benefiting. Yet they cry discrimination. And I will deal with discrimination later, because that is their constant mantra. If you look in commerce, in hospitality sector, the number of hotels, I often speak about that. Any sector you turn to over the past 2 years, We are transforming the way of life. We are transforming Guyana. Every single day, our ministers are out there with the people in the communities. Today, we had an outreach at Pigeon Island. I think we had more people than they are speaking to at Parade Ground. And that was a 2-hour arranged meeting. It was arranged this morning for this afternoon. And I believe we have more people than they have at Parade Ground. We had more people at Melanie than they have at Parade Ground. It means that more and more people are beginning to realize that they have nothing to offer other than a narrative predicated and premised on falsity and hypocrisy. That is what their narrative is premised upon. Yesterday, we celebrated Freedom Day, Emancipation Day, a great occasion for all Guyanese, a great occasion for our Afro-Guyanese brothers and sisters, because it marks the emancipation from the most heinous and cruel system of servitude ever known in human history, slavery. And it marks the celebration of freedom. And freedom, the slaves fought for freedom and won it. We fought for freedom from March 2nd to August 2nd, 2020, and we won it. And that is why this day, August the 1st and 2nd, are now so important in our history. It is the same freedom, but they are using this opportunity to spew and spread discord and division in our country. So the mantra of discrimination has become rampant all over again. And I say to them, go not only from 2015 to 2020, but go to their years from beyond, go to 1966 to 1992, and you take any year of theirs and compare it to our years and see from which government did Afro-Guyanese benefit more? Any year, you take any year. In our housing policy, under the People's Progressive Party, there is no period in APNU, AFC, PNC history that Afro-Guyanese benefited from the housing program as we have done. The PPP has done. The PPP has distributed more house lots in any given year than APNU did or PNC did in any 5-year period. 1 year against 5 years. Afro-Guyanese alone. Check the statistics. There is no year that Guyanese of Afro descent got more scholarships in APNU or PNC government than in any year in PPP government. Check it. You will see. They once said that the Cuban scholarships, they were discrimination. The Ethnic Relation Commission did a study, and there was no evidence whatsoever of discrimination. Look at leased lands and state lands, and you will see that in no year under APNU or PNC that Afro-Guyanese benefited more from the distribution of state land than in the PPP government. In fact, let me tell you this, and I want to put this on the record. When we were in government, we gave out state lands to West Coast Berbice African Guyanese. rice lands. Ramotar administration did that. When Granger come into government, he took away from 50 African families. He took it away from 50 African families. I led the charge for the PPP while out of government, and we gave back those lands to the Afro-Guyanese farmers, and we did it out of government. Out of government. They appealed the decisions. 50 families, they appealed the decision. When I got into government as Attorney General, I withdrew all the appeals. All the appeals. So that those 550 families can get back those lands. So in and out of government, we have done more for Afro-Guyanese than they did in government. And I can go through sector by sector. They like to use Linden as an example. Well, check the budgetary allocation. In 2021, we gave in Linden more resources than they did in any given year from 2015 to 2020. We have given more house lots in Linden from 2020 to now than they have done in 5 years from 2015 to 2020. But they would go to Linden and say that Linden is being discriminated against. Let me remind you of another statistic. Up to now, the people of Guyana and the PPP government is paying the light bill for Region 10. Billions of dollars. Billions of dollars light bill is being paid for Region 10 up to now. But if you give the sugar workers some money, it's racism and it's discrimination. These are facts, but they don't want to talk facts. They spew a jaundiced narrative. And that is why we have to constantly put the facts out there. In our Gold Scholarship program, we don't have to go into communities to advertise and speak about a program like that. We can put an advertisement in the newspapers. You know what we did? We went into every single village in this country. I was responsible for the East Coast of Demerara. Myself, Joe Hamilton, and Onesh Waldron and Frank Anthony went into every single community. Buxton, Melanie, Golden Grove, Nabaclis, Mahaika, Pleasance. Every single community, every single Afro-Guyanese community, and spoke to them, encouraging them to go and get the scholarship. They were on the ground telling the people, don't turn up to the meetings. They were telling the people, don't turn up to the meetings. Don't take the scholarships. I confronted that on the ground in the communities. They are telling their supporters, don't be educated. They are denying their supporters' children an education. And then they want to say that the PPP is discriminating. And that is the mantra. But they can't come to the facts, come up with the facts. From 2006 to 2011, we give millions of acres of land to Lindeners to do logging. The first time in the history of Guyana, small and medium scale loggers, we give land in Region 10, hundreds of them. They went and they took credit from courts to buy chainsaw. They went to Jumbo Jet and they buy equipment to do logging. They got contracts with Bai Shan Lin. They got contracts with Bai Shan Lin. These are Linden people. And when they got into government, they chased Bai Shan Lin out of the country. And they left all those people bankrupt. Bai Shan Lin had millions and millions of dollars of logs bought from those people and couldn't pay for it. They bankrupted dozens and dozens of families in Linden, their own supporters. That is what they did. every single thing that I am saying here can be fact-checked. And I hope that the press is listening and they can do stories from this narrative. Because every single thing I'm saying here is grounded in facts. We don't speak loose propaganda on these matters. So when they want, and that is what I'm saying, get back to the land issue. Let me get back to the land issue. As I promised, we are doing regularization now for Afro-Guyanese villages in Berbice who are going to get titles for land that they're living on for centuries, since slavery. They never did it. Our government is doing it, and I am privileged to be the minister leading that process. Afro-Guyanese villages in Berbice. And I'm going to start it on the east coast of Demerara for the backlands of African villages. And we are going to do it. And those of them who are speaking that they are African leaders and they are empowered, they want to empower their people, what are they doing about it? What have they done in 5 years for the people of Buxton and the backlands at Golden Grove, and the backlands at Anns Grove, at Bachelor's Adventure? All those people are now coming to me, and we have promised that we are going to give them regularity and title for those lands. That is empowerment. Going and power about the place, spewing rhetoric with nothing to deliver, but deliver for yourself. That is what they have done. So the scholarship program, Annette Ferguson got scholarship. Tabitha Sarabo Haley got scholarship. Nicolette Henry got scholarship. And now I am reading that Darren Wade got a scholarship. So who got scholarship under their government? Today, go and find out who are getting a scholarship under the PPP government. Ordinary Afro-Guyanese children. And it's not that they didn't give lands when they were in. It's not that they did not give lands. You know who got the lands. Lowenfield got land. Eric Phillips got land. Fisher got land. Cartier got land. And the list goes on. A selected few, Hopkinson, their friends and their cronies got lands. What they did for the ordinary Afro-Guyanese, that they are abusing and manipulating. What did they do? But they would go on Emancipation Day into the communities to mislead and to spew a narrative of discord and discrimination. But they can't tell the Afro-Guyanese what they have done for them. They can't point to anything that they have done. In particular, land issues, which they say is so vital for empowerment and development. That is a problem in Guyana. The African leadership, and nobody would want to talk about it, and they will call me racist tomorrow. But the African leadership is vacuous. The truth must be confronted at some point in time. For how long are we going to sweep these issues under the carpet and then mount a platform at parade ground and spew allegations of discrimination, leading people to believe that they are victims when you are not speaking the truth? When you had the opportunity, you give yourself scholarship. But you forgot those people's children who are listening to you. How many of those people's children you give scholarships to? Those who talking on stage, half of them get scholarships. Christopher Jones got land. Whom else did he give land to? I spoke a lot about that already. And I can pick every single one of them. And I could tell you what they did for themselves. That is the reality. I have a note here to speak about the taxes that they impose on education. And I could speak another hour on that. They're speaking about empowerment, but they've taken away land, they took scholarships for themselves, and they impose VAT on the ordinary Guyanese. Afro-Guyanese, they impose VAT on scholarship programs. And then they are masquerading there as the champions of Afro-Guyanese. No. And I will never accept that. We will never accept that. We will every day speak the truth. Every day. For how long you think? The truth will be covered and hidden. The truth is going to be hidden for some time. But at some point in time, the truth will not remain hidden. The truth always comes to fore. Yeah, somebody is saying that Christopher Jones got the government health center in South Rumpelt. Yes, he got a title, a certificate of title. Half of it is the land next door to the health center, the other half is the health center itself. And I'm not afraid that he will sue me because I have the documents. I have the plan. The plan of the land that he got, half of the land is in the health center building itself. He has title for the government health center. So you're correct, the person who is speaking here. Brooms got land. I forgot about Brooms. The amount of mining lands that she took for herself and her family and relatives and friends and different people holding it under her name. And the office of the president had a fund that was paying her children tuition fees at some university in a foreign land. This is what they did. And today, they want to stand and speak as representatives of Afro-Guyanese. I could tell you that they represented themselves. They represented themselves very well. And sensible people across the racial divide ought to recognize that. So I thought that I will spend some time dealing with, yes, Lowenfield got hundreds of acres. I can't remember what the number is. But he got, many believed that those lands were given to him as an incentive for him to deliver victory at the 2020 elections. I don't rule out that possibility myself. It's a reasonable inference to draw. So, they have misbehaved in the parliament and they were interrogated by the Privileges Committee, and the Privileges Committee made an order that they must be sanctioned, a recommendation, and that recommendation was adopted by the National Assembly, and sanctions were imposed. And a whole host of cry and exclamation in the public domain. What do you expect? I don't understand. What do they expect? To do what they did and get no sanction? And they have taken the government again to court. So the government has done them a wrong. Well, the matter is in court, and their salaries were suspended, and I hear a lot of talk in the public domain. Well, the law is very clear. Ministers, members of the National Assembly and Special Offices Emoluments Act, Chapter 107 of the Laws of Guyana, Section 6 permits the deduction of a parliamentarian, deductions from a parliamentarian's salary and wages if he is suspended by the assembly. So the decision as it is being peddled in the public domain is not one that is malicious, without basis, capricious, or arbitrary. It is grounded in the ministers, members of parliament, members of the National Assembly, and Special Offices Emoluments Act, Chapter 107 of the Laws of Guyana. Let me see, where is it? I want to get it so that you... No payment shall be made under this act to a member of the National Assembly in relation to his office as such a member with respect to any period during which he is required by the Constitution to cease to perform his functions as such a member, or is suspended from the exercise of such functions in pursuance of any standing order for regulation and conduct of the proceedings of the National Assembly. Very explicitly set down here. So that argument that they are peddling out there, and I don't wish to prejudge the legal issues, but I must speak on the law. I am the Attorney General, and if agencies of the state are being accused of illegality, then it is my duty to correct that public narrative. And in the correction of that public narrative, I am asserting that the power to deduct wages during a suspension is one that is grounded in the law. And I just cited the law. And there's another important issue that will have to be interrogated by the court. And it is Article 172 of the Constitution. And perhaps this article has never been interrogated in the manner in which it will now be before, either in Guyana or the Caribbean. And I plan this time around to test it and let the court interpret what this article means. This article says that no criminal or civil proceedings may be instituted against any member for words spoken or things done in the National Assembly. It protects the member, and it protects the words and the things done once it arises out of a petition, a bill, a resolution, or a motion. Well, the recommendation to impose the sanction on them came from a motion. It is grounded in a motion. It comes from a committee. It is an act, or it is a decision. And this Constitution, not an ordinary law, the Constitution is saying that no civil or criminal proceedings shall be issued in relation to that. What they have filed, I classify it as a civil proceedings. Any matter in which there is an allegation that the Constitution is violated, or in which damages are claimed, is a civil claim. And the Constitution, not an ordinary law, the Constitution says that the member is immunized, as well as the word said and things done are immunized as well. So we will have to see, and that must be viewed against the larger doctrine that Parliament regulates its own procedure. And Parliament is an arm of government that is independent, just like the judiciary. Parliament can direct the judiciary on how to conduct, on how the judiciary must conduct its business. Well, the same principle applies. The judiciary can direct Parliament how to conduct its business. especially on a matter that concerns maintaining the dignity of the House, because that is what is at issue here. Privileges of Parliament is that compendium of rules and regulations designed and conceived and intended to protect the dignity of the House. And the main privilege is that Parliament must be the sole determinant of what those privileges are and how they will enforce those privileges. Because Parliament must regulate its own process and must protect its own process from abuse. So that's the general principle. The Constitution says that Parliament must regulate itself subject to the Constitution. And it is the Constitution. So, I'm not saying that Parliament is above the Constitution. It is subject to the Constitution. And the Constitution says that no civil proceedings can lie for things done or said in the Parliament. The Constitution says that too. Of course, the court has a power to review legislation that is in contravention with the Constitution. Of course, there's a power, and that is why it says, the Constitution says that Parliament is subject to it. So, and that is why that immunity that I read doesn't relate to legislation. It doesn't relate to legislation. So we will have a very interesting interaction in this matter, because we will have to draw the line somewhere. The line has to be drawn so that Parliament's functions have to be clearly delineated, and the court's function and how far the court can go into regulating Parliament, those issues have to be examined, clarified, and settled. Because you have an obstructionist opposition who suing Parliament every time Parliament does something against their misconduct and disorderly behavior. And we can't continue like that. We can't continue like that. So, we are going into very interesting times, and I suppose our democracy is evolving, our laws are evolving, our democratic institutions are evolving, and it's good. We will know. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but these are cases that will go all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice, and they will finally be settled one way or another, and it will bring clarity to these matters, because these things are not happening in any part of the Caribbean, you know. Many of the cases that I have had to deal with, I can't find an equal in any part of the world. Nowhere in the world will you find an opposition leader not elected, and when the president appoints a police commissioner without consulting the opposition leader, who is not existing, the president gets sued. Nowhere on planet Earth that happens other than in Guyana. So the president apparently and the whole country must wait until Harman and Norton and the rest of them stop fighting, and when they decide that they will elect an opposition leader, then the president must say, okay, I will now appoint a commissioner of police. And the country must descend into chaos in the meanwhile. But they are so important that the president must wait on them. And when the president doesn't wait and go ahead and appoint, the president is a dictator. The president has violated the Constitution. Compare that when we give Granger 80 names for the election of a chairman of the Elections Commission, and they refuse all 18. Compare the two. They have not put an opposition leader in place. A police commissioner has to be appointed with consultation with the opposition leader. But there is no opposition leader. So if the president goes ahead, the president is wrong. We give 80 names as we are required to do. 18, we are only required to give 6. They reject all 18 and appoint their own. They are right. It is a level, it is a level of behavior that is not witnessed in any part of the world. We have a very unique, motley crew of leaders in this country. Never seen, at least in this part of the world. Never. We are without precedent when it comes to these matters. But we are dealing with them. I want to assure you that your government is in safe hands. Your government is capable. Guyana is in safe hands. Your children's future and your future are in safe hands once we are in government. And that is why we have to stay in government as long as these people are around. As long as they are around, we have to remain in government. And that is the note upon which I wish to close tonight. And I want to thank you very much for being with me here over the past hour. I think that we have covered a lot of ground. I may have been a little fired up, but sometimes you need that type of advocacy. You need that type of energy because of what you have to reject and what you have to, the doubts that you have to remove. And that is the purpose of this program, to inform and to educate every week. And if I am able to get through to one person per week, then I would have achieved my objective. This program is not intended to cause division. It is intended to bring unity, to educate our people. As I said, you don't have to support my party. You don't even have to vote for my party. All I want you to do is to act in your best interest and act in your country's best interest. And that is the purpose of this conversation that I'm having with you every Tuesday. I thank you very much. Please enjoy the rest of the evening and have a safe week until I join you next week for another engagement of issues in the news. Thank you and good evening.